We have cranking set at 400 RPMs. So meaning that when it's above the threshold of 400, it's going to start applying fuel. And the way this works is that it actually multiplies your main fuel table. This is why your warm start idle has to be set pretty on point. And these are the default values, and I find that the default values actually work decently well. So right now, according to this, it's 52 degrees. That's solely based on the coolant temp of the car sitting overnight. It's about 50 degrees outside, so that's about right, I would think. So we're gonna go ahead and see how this fires up. Okay, so that initial start was didn't fire, but we keyed it off and cranked it over and then started again. Okay, so we've got that dialed in decently well. So what that tells me is that the prime pulse is a little on the not so good side. So we don't have, so what we're gonna do here is we're probably gonna bring this up just a smidge, and we'll have to try it again Monday and kind of see where that puts us. Alrighty. So now at this step, we're going to see, we're going to go ahead and see how it wants to, hold on. So we've got an issue here. Accel enrichment is like fluctuating really bad, so we're going to bring this up a little bit to try to get Accel to stop working. That way it's not fudging with what we're doing here. I'll disable this all together. I should have disabled it. All right, so we're good there. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna start working on our warm up a little bit and kind of see what that nets us. So we're at 125 right here. Motor sounds okay. Doesn't sound like it's really struggling. So that right there is actually Accel enrichment, but we can't do that just yet. So we're gonna work on this real quick. And what we wanna do is just let it come back down to idle and then see if it does it. Now keep in mind, we still don't have an idle valve, so we're doing pretty damn good, I think, without an idle valve. Alrighty, so the real way that you want to do this is actually confirm this with a wideband. So when the engine is colder, it's going to want to be a little bit richer. It's no different when you're carbureted, right? When the motor's cold, what do? You pull the choke. We're essentially doing the same thing here, but just a bit easier where you don't have to deal with this. Once you get this dialed in, you shouldn't really have to mess with it any further. So I'm actually pretty happy with the default settings here, but essentially what's gonna happen is, this is one of those things where you're not gonna be really dependent on a wideband, you know? It's not gonna target 14.7 all the time. When the car's warmed up, 14.7 obviously is the ticket, but you know, as the car's warming up, you're gonna wanna be like 12.5, 13, just depending on your climate. But this actually sounds really good. The motor sounds really happy, it's not struggling. If you have this dialed in wrong, you'll know because the motor won't want to idle. So it'll struggle, it'll spit and sputter. So we're looking pretty good here. Motor's pretty smooth, doesn't sound any different. So I'm pretty happy of where we're at here. So we're gonna let this car come all the way up to full temp, and then we're gonna start dicking around with the the Accel enrichment. So we got the car basically warmed up where I like it. We have left the cranking and prime pulse off of the basically the default here. So we've got our injector settings in, and I'll kind of go into this a little bit. Yes, you could put random injectors in and not know. So long as you have like a general size, you can kind of figure it out. What I mean by that is, like, if you buy a set of 660 cc's or whatever the case may be, you can essentially throw this in here, and then it'll get you kind of close to where you need to be, okay? Ideally, though, you really want to have really good injector data. And even down the line, after you tune the car, let's just say that you need to run a larger injector. If you have the correct injector data, a lot of this is not going to really need to be touched, so long as you have the correct data. Now, like I said, this is the default settings, and we're going to see how the car starts up. Bam. So even without really changing this, it fires right up. So now, is it a little on the rough side? Yeah, a little bit, but it is what it is. It runs a lot better than it ever did on the carb, even with this like being not totally tuned. So at this point here, one of two things are going to happen. We're basically what we're gonna do here is we're gonna start cleaning everything up. We're gonna pull the spark plugs out, clean them up, maybe even replace them, and then get the throttle cable done. And I think we're actually ready to tune this even without the wideband installed. Okay, so this is the Accel enrichment. So the way this works is it's pretty simple. It's basically when you are stabbing the throttle, when you stab the throttle, there's incoming air that comes in suddenly, right? And so because of that, you have to add fuel accordingly. So the Megasport handles this a number of different ways. If you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you're interested in going to carb the EFI, but we're gonna talk about this really quick here. So the most traditional way is actually what's called time-based, okay? And the way that works is, we're going to look at this really quick here. So the way time-based works, it's a little bit more confusing, I think. So what we're looking at here is TPS dot. What TPS dot means is that it's a rate of change. Hold on one second, let me turn this work music down really quick here. So TPS dot is like the rate of change. So don't think about it as like a percentage, right? Not like 0 to 100%. It's really the measurement of how hard you're stabbing and how quickly you're stabbing the throttle, right? What we're going to do is we're going to do Accel pump, okay? Accel pump makes a lot more sense if you're carbureted because it works like an accelerator pump off of a carb, okay? And I like this a lot more. I basically will do this on all Alpha N cars. Sometimes some cars that have like really unreliable throttle position, I'll have to do this as well. But it's essentially the same thing. It's just a lot easier to wrap around because secondly, you have way more cells to work with. So it's exactly the same concept, except for you have, instead of having just 4, you've got double basically of it, and it's a lot easier to dial in. See? So you can do different throttle stabs and you've got way more range to work with, and this team tends to work better. Now, sometimes you may have to do a blend. So the map dot here is the same thing. The only difference is that it's based off of vacuum. And you can slide the slider here and do the exact same thing. So what happens is that sometimes you get cars that have really aggressive cams in here, so their idle is real wonky. And because of that, the way the cam's set up, the vacuum is really awkward as well. And so sometimes you need a little bit more and a little bit less, and this won't handle it. So you basically can blend this, and this weighs it out. It'll look at both tables, and it'll like look at this 25%, it'll look at this 75%, or whatever you have it set here. So this really is trial and error. And what I tell people when they start tuning is that with this table here, or any Accel enrichment, don't even look at the wideband. If the car sounds and feels good, like you can hit the throttle smooth and everything is good to go, leave it alone. Some cars require more fuel, some cars require a lot less, but this is transient stuff. I mean, think about how many times you move the throttle, that this is so minute that it's not going to make a big difference. So, but yeah, on this table here, basically what I do is I will fudge it enough where the car is drivable, and then I'll go back. I'll go back and I'll dial in the main fuel table here. And so once I get this dialed in, I'll actually turn off the Accel Enrich altogether. And so the simple way to turning that off really is like going down to your threshold and then just maxing it all the way out. And once you max it all the way out, it's not going to even look for it, and then just go back and clean up the table where it makes sense. And then you can go back and actually dial it in. So, while this is harder to kind of wrap your head around because there's so many things that are stacked above each other for it all to work, once you get it dialed in your mind, it actually works pretty simply, and this can go relatively quickly. So, and the best thing about this is that, once you get it dialed in, there's no more messing with it. You should virtually never have to mess with any of the stuff ever again once you get it dialed in. So, but yeah, so that's basically about it, and something I wanted to cover. So just really quickly, we got the car warming up, or it should be relatively warmed up, and you can hear it idling, and we're gonna look at our settings here and see what it sounds like. Look at that. I can stab the throttle any which way and the car's happy. The problem is though, is that it's relatively rich. So I don't know if you can see the smoke back there, but it's definitely on the rich side. But this is more than enough for me to finish tuning the main fuel table. And like I said, what I'll do is once that's done, I'll go back and I'll start cleaning this up.